All right. So, so I can use for this. So, the speakers that these hackers get, okay? So, essentially, the way, okay, so a lot of times what they do is they end up, they've come up with this whole way these people get infatuated because these deep dark webs actually require like a very highly sophisticated satanic ritual that a bunch of people in this town have fine-tuned and figured out a long time ago. And then essentially they like they attempt to come up with a reason for doing it. And so essentially what they're doing is blackmailing into a very deep dark web that's very difficult to actually get into because it has a gatekeeper, and that gatekeeper basically is a sick fuck also, and requires people to have these like really authentic specialized satanic rituals just to be accessing it. It's not just fucking a kid, it's not just killing people, it's doing it in a very sophisticated, like fine-tuned kind of a way, okay? And so with that blackmail becomes what they need basically to be having one of these highly sophisticated, like full spectrum AI dark webs. So essentially they all have outfitted speakers. So here's like basically where they turn it on themselves. And that part of the excuse is that they always claim that it comes from afar. What you're going to see nowadays is people like counting down to turning it on in somebody else's speaker, but it also turns it on in their own. Then that's what they sit around whining. Because essentially, what ends up happening is like they have to go through like essentially the tape plays. It's like go to this spot, go to this spot, go to this spot, do this, suck this dick, and it plays on a loop all the time in their speaker until the gatekeeper essentially, usually a lot of them have, the ones that get into these kind of dark webs, a lot of them have camera eyes, like the Google camera eyes. So when the gatekeeper sees them do that, then they move it to the next looping audio that has like some sort of action that they're required to do. So then this stuff is essentially like what is actually required to acquire one of these satanic S&M highly sophisticated AI backed dark webs, okay, that come from Russian intelligence. That's where they're actually from. The Islamic terrorists, they take these people, and then what they did previously satisfies. And so then they have essentially an Islamic terror intelligence system, essentially the same. The Nazis, they have a similar, theirs is similar also. So the whole idea is that the things that I know is like the types of like satanic blackmailing that they do. See, the Nazi pedobang is different. when they do the psychological sex slaving to the children that causes them to be basically like uh, schizophrenics that play out sex scenes and rituals and stuff. That's stuff's not the Nazi versions of this stuff. They're not allowed to do that to children. They're not allowed to do those satanic rituals. They have a different one, okay? So but the ones they do around here are real Satanism stuff that involves the little children of enchantment is what I refer to them as. And that, see, the Nazis view those children as like their gods, kind of. All right, so you're not allowed to do that in their version of this stuff. So essentially, these hackers around here with these cops, they all actually have done so many fucking horrible things in life that essentially they came up with an insider group idea of allowing everybody to do that, including the cops, including Cayman Island Pedo Bank, justifying this looped audio that pushes them to the event. And then the torture or whatever being that, see, around here what I know is that they're actually turning it on themselves, but the go-to in Satanism that uses these is to build some sort of illusion of it coming from some outside entity of some sort. So nowadays they like to do blatant tech psycho kind of stuff where they're essentially the person, if they focus on somebody specific that it doesn't end up turning on, then what ends up being is that their like reason kind of breaks down because they usually focus on one person. And then if that one person doesn't actually get that turned on, then essentially everybody else has theirs turned on. And so then it just becomes them pressing the button that causes them to have to go through all this stuff to a highly sophisticated satanic ritual. And so usually they target one person or a few people that then they all sit around claiming that person causing that stuff for themselves. But if that one person doesn't actually have that shit turned on, then what everybody observes is them blatantly turning on their own forced progression to a satanic ritual like that. And see, that's where these people just may not realize that kind of gets in the way of their internal insider law justifications for doing that. See, they were getting passes because people were committing suicide for resisting. And so then it was like, look the other way kind of around here. But now they're being observed doing it on purpose. See, when Mopey, the pedo-y snappies, thought that his like weird encryptions would actually matter in a computer science way, that's because he's a stupid little like retard, okay? And that's because he's a stupid retard. And since he wanted to be tech psycho or something, now he's just been observed, causing everybody to have to go to it on purpose. And so, essentially, the satanic S&M has a theoretical, like, the gatekeeper, there is two options. They basically have to be fuck raped into a schizo. Then they have to be fuck raped into a schizo. And then they have to be fuck raped into a schizo. And then they have to be fuck raped into a schizo. And then essentially, by the end of all that, then what they do to the children essentially will be what happens to them. And then they need to go to a psych unit. But that once they get fuck raped into a schizo, then that section or looping audio gets progressed along. See, if it comes from afar, then see if they're observed doing it to themselves, then technically the satanic S&M has to do the fuck rape into schizo method. And so if they're able to maintain the illusion of their weird, intricate justification shit, then the satanic S&M lets them progress to these. But it can't be self-inflicted, basically. See, if it's self-inflicted, then the S&M, the satanic S&M, they technically have rules of the self-inflicted shit, okay? And so, that's kind of where these people, this stuff happens behind the scenes in the dark web, and that most people may not realize, like, what, I mean, this will represent probably thousands of people, potentially, these kind of ideas. See, when the dumb tech psycho turns on all the tapes, that sometimes I mean, you think it's like a rainbow gathering. How many people end up going to like a barter fair rainbow gathering? That's what these retards around here are activating, okay? And so, because their method of proof or whatever didn't pan out, essentially those thousands of people have to be put through that. And so, that's where I want to remind people that people that think that's delusional, the delusional encryption stuff would like mean anything, that stuff doesn't. And that's one of the things that you can figure out kind of who these people are by these delusional encryption ideas, yeah. And so, essentially, since their targeted person didn't end up getting the pedo bang tapes and shit, then they merely did all of it just so that they could get one of those satanic S&M dark webs. And so, since it violates most laws, that is where everybody that doesn't fuck rape them into schizos is basically there's internal stuff to these satanic S&Ms. There just really is. If you people aren't actively engaged in making them fuck raped into a schizo, then you guys are included in there. And then that's where this whole group will get pushed to be thrown in prison for that. Or a psych unit. And so if you're not punishing them or whatever, then you're included with them. And that means that you'll be a part of what would be the push to be thrown in prison and shit. So that's where around here, this type of stuff happens kind of every year. They have to like re-up every year. So this year, I imagine that they're probably going to have people that will be coming to Tri-Cities to be doing that stuff to all of them. And that, yeah, that's where they won't be getting a secure dark web out of that shit either. See, if you don't do Ultimate Cayman Pedo Bang Psycho in the most pedo-y perfect way or something, that's pretty much, then you don't get one. And so that's basically where all the mopies out there that thought that they were fucking smarter. See, the way that you prevent little mopies from doing that is you just don't blackmail. Then they can't turn up the speaker fucking volume. And then they can't put a fucking tape in your fucking speaker. So, and since I'm researching right now, this is why I would never blackmail, because I utilize hearing aids to research these type of shit, this shit. And that, yeah, if they could turn up that shit, then I wouldn't be researching. And so the way to prevent that in all ways is literally to, well, I just never cheated on my wife. And I never did hookup sites, and I never did anything that I would never be afraid of anything. See, they could go up to Lena and be like, he did this. And I'd be like, yeah. And that, yeah, my whole life, since childhood, I've been constantly mindful of reduction of Satan power, whatever, blackmailing and extortion. See, I don't do things that would ever really extort me at all. Nothing in my life. I don't have secret drug addictions. I don't have secret affairs. I don't do weird closeted things at all. I don't do pedophilia. I don't do weird infatuations about my sisters and shit like that. I don't do none of that shit. I whack off to normal porn. Dude that fucks hot looking chick. And so that's the kind of stuff that nobody can extort me. And that's where my whole life I've attempted to take away power. See, like if I had these speakers talking about this shit, that would activate people wanting to shove these fucking tapes into a speaker, into the profile that then pipes into the speakers, and that this type of stuff would activate those people wanting to do that type of shit. But I'm able to keep it quiet. I have a highly acute ability to hear. I don't need it loud to. And so that is kind of where my whole method is to gather an understanding of this stuff. You know, people, and you can type these people, because they'll be like, what's the proof? What's the proof? And it's like, I'm getting information that in an attempt to clarify previous research of mine, and that this has always been my method, and that is where these people, they're the ones that are like, proof. That'll be them. Just will be.